So my name is Thomas Hillard. I'm located in Berlin. I've been here since 2012. I'm an American, but I moved here from New York City then. I work presently at Cerascreen in Germany. It's Cerascreen GmbH. In the US, it's Cerascreen LLC. And I am the head of the US team. So since March of 2020, I have built the team and launched the company of the at-home diagnostic testing for Cerascreen there, including marketing, operations, product development, partner outreach, new business strategies, budget planning, and all of the strategy and coordination that goes into working with the office of the main Cerascreen in Germany. My dad was working at Hewlett-Packard. It was the early days of Silicon Valley. Kids in my school wore Apple t-shirts. I was using a Macintosh growing up. I had no idea what any meaning of that was, but I was a very curious person. I was into the arts, theater, music. I performed in the community theater in Palo Alto. I was a pretty normal kid. I had various hobbies. I wasn't great at sports, but I tried. I remember scoring like 3 hoops in my basketball team in 7th grade. I got into some other things like DJing and graffiti and hip hop and when I was growing older, but what really stuck with me was playing guitar, and I wanted to be a musician, a professional musician. So I decided to go to a music college in Boston. And I was all about writing lyrics and playing with other musicians in Palo Alto and just experiencing life. Business was in the backdrop for me, but I wasn't primarily focused on business. Like I started a babysitting company. I had the lemonade stand on the street. I got a job as soon as it was legal to do so, just because I wanted to be earning money. But primarily, I had this idea of starting this, bigger version of myself with a magazine, a record label, production company. My friends and I had, this whole industry planned out that we called Carbon Industries. And that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to build Carbon Industries from about 17 years old. California is a really unique place. There is a spirit of the people there, which is, if you want something, you should do it. You should build it. There is no structures of what rules you have to understand, what government organizations you should go through, how much money you might need to raise. And that was, I think, the spirit of everything for me growing up. I just figured if I wanted to do it, I could. I just had to find a way how. And that may be a kind of unique thing about California. Some people say it goes back to like the gold rush and all of these miners who showed up there and wanted to pan for gold. And they just had this idea, like a lot of people, immigrants especially, coming to America of a greater future. So I think that's the spirit. The Silicon Valley thing, it was there because my friends' parents were all working at computer companies. They were making software. I remember in 3rd grade getting in an argument with another kid about the difference between a hard drive and a soft drive. So, the vocabulary was already implanted in our heads, but it's not like any of us talked about starting companies or being software billionaires or something like this. And really, the Silicon Valley of today is very different from the Silicon Valley that I grew up in. It was very much a community place back then. The neighbors up and down the street knew each other and did potlucks together. And there was a togetherness that I actually miss tremendously. When I go to Silicon Valley now, walking down around the streets of Palo Alto, it feels the same to me as when I've walked around the streets of Manhattan. It's just very businessy. It's very, fast. People are having coffee meetings, talking about raising capital and VC and that's the element there. So growing up was different, and I still love going back to California, especially to the Bay Area, and just having that spirit in the air. And I think it's always going to be with me. But it was a different place. I decided to do a bachelor's degree because I came from a family where everybody went to college. My parents had master's degrees and had been working on PhD programs. My brothers did master's degrees. Their friends were all in higher education. So that was normal to me. I didn't particularly want to get an education when I was finishing high school. I didn't have a better plan. And, it gave me a dorm room and something to structure my days with at that point. And like I said, I figured that music and entertainment was going to be my future. So I was really just trying to figure out how to start building the network and understanding what the business world was going to mean for me as somebody in the music industry. I chose the undergrad, which combined the music classes and the general electives like English and history. Because it was a 4-year degree and I figured it was better than the 2-year. It was what was expected of me, essentially. I was in school and I had a brother who was working at a software company in Silicon Valley, and I was making a band that I was going to be playing shows with and promoting. And at that point, there was Napster and there was the internet, just still the beginnings, for most people. But it was relevant and I knew we needed a website. So I started building a website and got the help of my brother who was working at Interwoven at the time. And I remember him taking me through the source code of Microsoft Wizard's, web page builder. And he showed me how the first 900 lines of code were just trash. And he's like, you can just delete that. And he showed me the most important codes that I needed in the page. And then my other brother, shared his website host server with me and taught me how to use the protocols to upload the files and program the domain name with the IP address of the server. And so I became kind of started doing like a mini computer science while in my music school. A lot of the things I was learning in the music school weren't relevant to any of that, but it was important for me to have a website. And I started building other websites as a result because it was in demand. And by the time I'd finished school, I knew how to make web pages and things like Craigslist, which in the US is very important for, listing business ads, hiring people, looking for apartments. It's still relevant today, I think, even. I remember posting ads on Craigslist and putting links to my websites in there. And I launched many different small companies trying to find something that would work. So by the time I finished college, I, had a degree in business and music. But I was earning money by building websites. And my first company was a company I launched by posting an ad on the internet and building a website for it and quickly updating the website. I would look at my competitors and I would change the content of my website to have a better search result. Back then, Google was very easy to manipulate. And I was able to get my website to the top of the search results within 2 or 3 months. And it was free advertising. I was getting new customers every week. And I built a company in pet services, which I sold within a year and a half. And at that point, I realized this is my career, not the music industry. And so I started learning more about computer science and programming. I started hiring designers and programmers to learn from, but also to use. And I launched my next company within about a year. And I moved to California. And I started meeting with investors and meeting more and more developers, designers. And over the next 5 years, I probably launched 3 other companies. And when the iPhone came out, I launched an iPhone app company that was for finding happy hours, which for those who aren't familiar with the term is how you find a bar or, a local kind of pub that might be offering a discount on its beers between usually 5 and 7 p.m., just when people are getting out of work and you want to get them into the bars and don't let them go home yet. And so we made an app that would help you find the best happy hour nearby. When I had finished working at the consulting firm in Chicago, I moved to New York because I felt that was the best place to start a company. And I was looking for a business partner or a team, but I ended up meeting an investor who I had met in an earlier part of my life, who had just invested in a company in Berlin. And he offered me the opportunity to be a co-founder in a company he had just invested in there, which already had traction and a couple of team members on the management team. And I came and met the team, worked with them for a week, and decided that I have to move to Berlin. After being in Berlin for 6.5 years and having been in 2 different companies, one which I had equity in, and launching a few that didn't really work out, meeting with lots of investors, I felt like I was very tightly woven into the community. And for my years before that, I had been working at an advertising agency in Chicago, a very well-known global advertising agency, working with companies like SAP and IBM. And I worked at a consulting firm after that, a global consulting firm called NTT Data. And they're basically like working for IBM or, Accenture. And I felt that all of this experience somehow had left me with some holes in my, complete profile. I, as an entrepreneur, as a product developer, as a business manager, I couldn't always look at a balance sheet and understand what everything meant. I couldn't build a business plan and be totally confident that everything in the business plan was there that needed to be there. And that, I might sit down in a meeting with a venture capitalist and not have all of the vocabulary or references that would speak to them specifically. I just noticed that there was holes in my total, handbook as a business person, entrepreneur, technologist, whatever you want to say. So I started educating myself. I did some certifications. I did all the trainings that were available to me. I started working on getting my PMP certification. And while looking at that, I said, this is all great, but actually what I need is an MBA. And I started looking at MBA programs, reading from people on Reddit, on the internet, where the forums that discuss MBA programs, discuss the different programs and the pros and cons. I looked at the rankings between I think The Economist, I think maybe CNN has one. Obviously, Financial Times is one of the more important ones. I spoke to my parents about it. I spoke to friends who had MBAs about it. And I started kind of compounding all of that information and deciding, okay, does it make sense to do it in the US? Does it make sense to do it here in Germany? In Spain and France and England, there's also wonderful business schools, but I wanted one that had a nice international student body. I didn't want to have just lots of people from France because I wasn't sure I would live in France for the rest of my life. I didn't want to be commuting to the UK for a program in the UK if I wasn't totally devoted to moving to the UK. The travel didn't sound appealing to me. The US was obviously a great option, except very, very expensive. And I couldn't actually find a huge difference between the programs there and what I could get from some of the schools in Germany. So it really got narrowed down to staying local, or at least within Germany, and finding a program that was fitting to my lifestyle and had the students that I really wanted to network with. And it came down to ESMT and just a couple other schools. So I audited those schools. I went to their classes. I spoke to their program leaders. I spoke to students on campus. And I continued to review all of the different kind of threads on the internet where people were discussing these schools specifically. And meanwhile, there were deadlines coming up. So, I had the crunch to really figure it out quickly. And I remember I went to an open house at ESMT just, I think, 3 days before the deadline of the application. It was before Easter weekend. And I had to really quickly throw together this application. I did the open house and I wasn't totally sold yet. And then I did the open house and I saw the campus and I just saw how well everything was integrated. I saw how the branding, from the emails to the documents to the presentations that they gave me, it all came together completely and concisely. And no other school had really spoken to me yet in that way. And I felt that, this is how a business should properly be run. And absolutely a school needs to do it too. So at that point, once I saw the open house and I kind of had that aha moment, I decided I have to apply here. At least, I need to know that I got in, and I got that early bird application too, because if you can, it's really worth, doing that. It speeds you up in the application process. And, of course, there's usually a benefit within the admissions practices as well. I applied for one of the scholarships that was offered, and it all came together. Within about 4 days, I had a response, and a week and a half later, I had been accepted. From all of the areas that I really felt I needed additional education, mentorship, examples from other classmates, and especially from the courses, the ones that started speaking to me the soonest was literally in the first module. There's a course on general management. And I remember reading a case that profiled managers who were specifically very effective, and it follows them all around their office minute to minute. And I remember reading that and just being like, yes, this is how a manager should be. I knew it. And yeah, that was something that just brought it together for me immediately. It connected the dots. I felt I knew how to be a good manager, but I had seen so many types of managers, I wasn't sure anymore. Another example, another class that we had also in the first module that really connected things for me, it filled these holes that I felt I had in my background, was the data analysis and forecasting class. This is one which is taught by Catalina Stefanusco, if I'm pronouncing her name right. And Catalina walks you through how to take a data set. And once you have your hypothesis and you've gotten a proper sample size of data, you can start to forecast all sorts of things, whether it's consumer behaviors or trends in purchases or customer price sensitivity as elements change within the marketplace. And it was fairly simple and straightforward, but so quickly, just within that 1 week, I realized that I suddenly had so much more control over these things, which in the past, there wasn't any group of YouTube videos or a book that I could buy at the bookstore, which would really confidently teach me how to do such kind of forecasting. That was one that I just never had it. And immediately I had it. Management accounting is a class which I loathed, but also loved, because first of all, it's very exciting. The teacher who teaches it has a very interactive method, which keeps students engaged and also on their toes, because you are doing quizzes throughout the class, which grade you as the class is progressing. So you don't have time to go home and brush up. You need to listen and you need to read before you get there, because your grades are going to be reflected in how you engage. And that keeps you on your feet. But also the examples of how management accounting can control a business, how it can subjugate a business or how it can help a business profit and economically grow, were very simple. They were concrete examples which I could relate to from my own experience, but also had seen outside in the world. And that was something that I just needed to know. I didn't understand beforehand. I knew, you have to account for sales tax and your inventory, but how to allocate your costs and how to manage transfer costs, how to make a decision about an investment in a project with NPV. They're very simple concepts, but until then, nobody had really ever pointed it out and said, this is what you need to know. So the student body is so diverse. There really was experience from all over the place. On one side of me was a CFO, another was a supply chain management expert. One of the members of my group was managing a hotel chain. And I just remembering how I would every once in a while look around me, realizing I don't know how to do this. But within an arm's reach, there was somebody there. And in the data analysis forecasting class I was talking about, in one of the exercises, we had to build a table in Excel, which is something I've done 100,000 times. But there was just a function that I couldn't fully get. And this team member of mine with the hotel chain was an Excel whiz. And this was just an example of leveraging the experience and knowledge of others. He knew how to do it immediately. And actually everyone else in our group needed his help too. But after that, we all had it. And that was just one example. In our entrepreneurship class, we wanted to come with an idea for a business which was going to be sustainable. And we started out with an idea which was really cool, but it actually wasn't very sustainable. And we had a sustainability expert in our team. And she understood the issues of integrating an ESG strategy into a business plan and ended up leading that project for us, actually. And it was a great project. We got an excellent mark on it. That's just a couple of examples. I guess if I would go just one further in the business simulation, particularly, annealing type of experience, where all the students are put up against each other, launching companies that have to compete, and there's going to be one winner standing at the end. I had what ended up being one of the highest performing students in the class, and I didn't realize it at the time, but she offered to be our CEO, and she was such a strong leader, so powerful, so motivated. I had never met anybody like this in my life, and to have somebody like that just suddenly was a model for me that I reflect on all the time now. How would Karen do it? And I learned so much from her, and I'm so grateful for that experience. And we did fantastic in that simulation as well. Every one of the classes is fun and entertaining and enlightening, but the people who come to it do actually create that warmth, energy, the networking that you assume is going to be there, but you don't really know how it's going to happen or who's going to make what connections where. There's many different ways that the fun and excitement comes into the program. Just from the very beginning, in the first week, you spend a day out in nature on various obstacle courses. You have to, disassemble some, mines, and there's radioactive materials that you have to wear goggles to protect yourself from. And these experiences, are all coming together, and everybody gets to meet and have dinner that night and present, their lessons learned on working in a team. And that's just in the beginning, but the relationships grow throughout the program. And by the end of the program, everyone was the best friend. I was reflecting on it on my way home from graduation just last weekend, how we all operated the same way with each other. We had so much trust, we had respect, we knew about each other's stories, we knew what each other's strengths and vulnerabilities were, but we trusted each other the most. And that was something that just grew from one module to the next, and in those discussions and meetings that we had in between. There was a lot of social activities that ESMT organized, and of course the program normally includes the International Field Seminar, as well as the GNAM program, which are experiences to travel and get to know each other. We, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, didn't have those experiences, but there are makeup ones which we are going to have. However, my point is that each one of these modules and activities gave us an opportunity to get to know each other better, where friendships were formed, people moved careers, job positions, due to the ones that they had met and the learning experiences they got from each other. And I think it's these friendships that you have, the events that are organized, and then all of these other kind of serendipitous things that we self-organized as a class throughout the program, which really made it an irreplaceable experience. I often came home and I didn't know how to explain to my wife everything that had just happened. I had had so much fun. I had, grown so much as a person. My ESMT experience was supposed to be something that would fill in all of these gaps. Choosing the Executive MBA was a commitment to my career and to myself to give me the tooling that I needed to survive in any situation that would come up, but also really ratchet me up to the next level within my current company, within my next company. If I wanted to launch a company, I figured this Executive MBA would let me decide when and how to do that, and understand what I needed to accomplish that. And even before the program was finished, I already felt that I could achieve these things which I had been dreaming about. But now that it's over, I know not only am I fully confident and in control of what I want to do in my job and my career, I'm ready to go to the next thing. At the moment that it happens, I will know. And where I am right now, I understand where I want to be. And it's the Executive MBA that gave me that confidence. When I talk to my team members at work, I recommend that they get an MBA, and I highly recommend that they get an MBA from ESMT. Getting my Executive MBA at ESMT is one of the best career choices I've ever made.